Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Yosefa Fogel-Rubel, and this is One-on-One, Women Talk Torah, a series brought to you by Matan Women's Institute for Torah Study. Rabbanit Shani Taragin is a senior lecturer at Matan and the educational director of the Bellows Eshkolo Educators Institute for Tanakh and Jewish Studies at Matan's Jerusalem branch. She is also the educational director of the Marot Halacha program in Matan Ra'anana. Shani, thank you so much for being here with me.
It is an extreme honor to be here, to be able to converse and to share words of Torah wisdom with you. And may I already say that it's a special zchut, Yosefa, with you, because we go way back, Baruch Hashem, to various learning programs, both in the Moshava Beit Midrash program, and now it is a zchut to not only speak with you as a Talmidah, but a Talmidah Chavira, a real colleague in Torah. So thank you.
I really appreciate it, and it's a great joy to be able to speak with people who I both look up to as a model, and also I'm able to speak with as a colleague. It's really a special zchut. So thank you so much. I want to go backwards. I want to go backwards to wherever you want to take us, and ask you how you started on the path of learning Torah or loving Torah, and then eventually teaching Torah. Where did that start for you?
I think that if you said you're okay with going all the way back, then it really does go all the way back. As early as I can remember, I must say, I loved learning Torah, and Baruch Hashem had phenomenal role models in my life. I remember waking up at a very young age, always seeing my father engrossed in Daf Yomi, my mother from the time that she was very young, who always learned Rashi with her father, Alav HaShalom, and instilled that love and Divrei Torah around the Shabbos table. My parents always would go around. I'm one of 8 children, Bli Ayin Hara, and they would always say, right, both the boys, the girls in the family, okay, what Bar Torah do you have to share? And I think a large part of it was also that Torah learning was not something exclusive to school, nor even just to the home. Every Shabbat, our shul also had Ona groups, as many Batei Knesset have. But in our shul, we had learning groups and Ona groups. So it was also just understood. You learn Torah during the week, you learn Torah at home, you learn Torah on Shabbat. And that very much instilled me with a love of learning. Also, just watching my parents, my siblings, with books all the time and Sfarim. I remember Shabbos afternoons, I would, from 4th grade, 5th grade, cuddle up on the couch with the little, at that point, it wasn't even the little midrasses, it was the midrasses. And that continued definitely through camps also. I went to Camp Marasha, where Shiur was 2 hours a day. I don't know, any other camp where they have that. You learn Torah, Baruch Hashem, exposed to phenomenal mechanechim from a very young age. And I think the teaching component also began at an early age, both with regard to Divrei Torah around the Shabbos table, and then in high school, starting a Parsha press and giving a Divrei Torah, and then becoming one of these learning counselors in the youth groups on Shabbat. And I'd say a major turning point came when, after the summer in Israel, at that point, Rabbi Abi Warhaftik, the director of Marasha, asked me, he said, would you come back? At that point, there was a Machon program. And I said, I really want to devote, I want time to learn. He said, well, then why not start a summer program for girls to learn? And that's exactly what we did. And I had the opportunity within that program, not only of teaching, all the time was either teaching my peers or teaching younger children. This time it was teaching other girls, other young women who had wanted to learn for the summer. So these were very seriously minded young women who came for 2 months to devote their mornings to Torah study. So in addition to phenomenal mechanchim, Rabbi Billet, Rabbi Harari, Rabbi Berman, I also had the opportunity to teach them and realize, wow, I just love sharing Torah. And that continued certainly the next summer thereafter, and various learning programs since.
So that when I came to Israel for the year. Is this in the 90s?
Yes. Oh, thank you. This is in the 80s.
Okay.
This is in 1980. 1989 was the summer program, the first summer program, then 1990.
I am currently
Then
3 years old.
and I am 16,
Makes
15,
sense, yeah.
16. And then my year in Eretz Yisrael. So we'll fast forward a little. Those were really the first opportunities to teach Torah, I guess, on a higher level. And at the same time, I was also, in addition to loving Torah, I love learning many, many subjects. And I guess I also have a passion for the sciences. And I kept on deliberating. I knew, at that point, I had gone early admissions to Stern College, was majoring in biology and English literature and philosophy and Jewish studies. I said, this is the way that I want to live my life.
Surprised.
I had 4 majors. At that point, you were allowed to do that. It was actually a triple major and a minor in philosophy. And the again, being involved in Stern and the newspaper and the Torah Activities Committee, so that also provided many different opportunities for teaching on a more college age level now, and was deliberating back and forth, pursuing medicine, pursuing chinuch. I went to Israel for the year, still undecided in terms of career choice, and realized that my life is really I not only passionate about Torah learning, and not just about Torah living, but about Torah teaching. And I remember my father, the physician, telling me that you could be a good doctor and a good teacher. And I had this whole plan. I was going to go to Einstein and I was going to give shiurim and Torah on a high level during the week. And he would smile and he would say, okay, but realize that if you really want to excel at something, you have to focus on it. And the question was, what was going to be my focus? And I think in Eretz Yisrael, seeing phenomenal role models in Torah, seeing that there is a way of really incorporating so many different aspects of learning, of knowledge in Torah, and thank God, having opportunities to both learn and teach. So already Sunday mornings, my year in Israel, I was in Mechlala, and they did not have classes Sunday morning. Second semester, there was a pedagogy program. So together with a very good friend of mine, Dasi Billet, Dasi Jacobson, we went to Matan, to Dr. Brina Levy's class and Dr. Aviva Gottlieb-Zornberg's class. And that was my first exposure to Matan, so that the next year when I was married and my husband and I were learning in Eretz Yisrael, I was learning at Matan in their advanced Talmud program. And it was really Rabbanit Bina, I must say, who gave me also wonderful opportunities. They had just started an Ethiopian program, so she provided me with opportunities to teach them. And one of my chavrutot, one of my colleagues in the advanced Talmud program in Matan, was Rabbanit Oshra Koren, who was going on Chufshat Leida and was an aim bayit and a teacher in Machon Gold. And she asked if I would substitute during her Chufshat Leida. So at that point, it was for both Shana Aleph, Shana Bet, and Shana Aleph students. And I did that for 3 months. And the director of Machon Gold at the time, Mrs. Shani Solo, who I'm very proud and honored to call not only a wonderful mentor, and now she's also a student colleague in the Matan classes. Oh. So she asked if I would come to teach the following year. So I was still pursuing my bachelor's degree at that point, continuing in Bar Ilan. And I taught that year both Shana Aleph and Shana Bet students. And the Shana Bet students didn't realize that I was only a few months older than they were.
Wait, and were you?
So that
were
was my first official.
Were you studying when Chama was in Matan in the Talmud program?
So Nechama Barish, okay. Yes, was in Matan. She made Aliyah in 1991. I was here the year of 92. We were actually, this is funny, we remember this, we now teach together in TBA and in Matan. And when she was a senior in Stern, I was an early admissions freshman in Stern. And there was a small Beit Midrash on the second floor, and my dorm room was on the second floor. So every night, late at night, I would go to the Beit Midrash, and there were only a few women there who would take advantage of the learning. And she was there. That's where I first met her, and she had a chavruta every night with someone named Yael Zeiger at the time, who is currently Yael
There are a
Ziegler.
lot of worlds
So
colliding in
we
one
actually,
story.
the three of us, there are times that I want to go back to that and say, wow, if only we would know, where we would all be together in a few
Oh.
years. Little did we
Mhm.
know, but late nights, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, that was our first meetings, one with the other. And yes.
Wow. So for you, there was a very clearly throughout your childhood learning was a theme, both in your family and just in what you would be doing on a regular basis. But the teaching came in at a very young age as well, from what I'm
And
understanding.
I think I realized exactly that I loved just sharing words of Torah. It just came naturally.
Mhm.
There was never a decision, I'm going to be a teacher. It was, oh, you have some words of Torah to share? Let's share those words. And I think part of the beauty and part of the excitement in teaching comes when you see that when you're excited about what you're sharing, when it's meaningful for you, and then you see other people's faces light up. That was it. For me, I said, this is, you can figure out your shlichut earlier on in life when you see that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, wants you to do something. בדרך הולך אדם מוליכין אותו, הבא לטהר מציין לו.
So you already mentioned a few names in that abridged version of Shani Tarragin's history um, regarding role models. Who were some of those role models that you really today still think about as having been part of your earlier journey, or maybe even still of your journey now?
Excellent question. So definitely my parents, both of them. I look at my siblings, and firstly, we each joke that we all felt, each and every one of us as if we were the only child, the most favored child, because Baruch Hashem, they really invested in each one of us. And I had a chavruta, both with my father and my mother from a very young age. And that's definitely what inspired me to do the same with my children. So my
I just
parents,
want to
when
comment that was very unusual. No, was that not unusual among very?
very, very, but I didn't
I
know that.
know, but that's
As
really
a matter
very,
of
very
fact,
special. I mean, we happen to have grown up
yes,
not in the same decade, but relatively close to one another, and that was unusual, and that's very, very, very
yes.
special gift that they gave you.
Yes, yes. So with my mother, it was less formal. It was, our homework together every night, and she would be excited just, learning with us. And I hear even from students today that they send their children, especially in Eretz Israel, to schools, and they don't feel that they're qualified to sit and help them with their homework. And I look back and realize, well, my mother was, extremely qualified, and that's why really women today should recognize Baruch Hashem through their children that it's so important to continue with our own education and edification and Jewish sources and skills. So my father, who again was busy all day, would make time every night to learn with each and every one of us. And I remember he would learn, I guess my brother started learning Gemara in fifth grade. So in fifth grade, he would start learning Gemara with him. And, I was learning Chumash with him. And then when I was in fifth grade, I said, okay, so now it's time for me to learn Gemara. And I remember he looked at me, he said, would you like to learn Gemara? And I said, yes. And I didn't think that it was a question, meaning I thought that's what you do. You get to fifth grade and you learn Gemara with daddy. And so that was my first Gemara chavruta. Was with my father. So definitely my parents. I also give a tremendous amount of credit to my elementary school principal, definitely teachers. I had a phenomenal teacher. She's actually here, and she teaches in Har Nof and different seminaries as well. Mrs. Esther Shurin, a tremendous role model, taught me not only Sefer Shmot B'iyun and again, different stories that I'll never forget. She truly expressed what it meant to live what you're learning, a real Torah Chayim with tremendous tzniut, anava. And my elementary school principal, Rabbi Freeman, who I now have the zchut of living with his children here in Alon Shput, he was a Holocaust survivor and walked around with such a sense of dignity and pride in both the students of this was Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, Yeshivat Lev, and making sure that we would walk walk around with pride with the zchut of learning Torah. It wasn't just discipline that was, significant. It was if you were walking slouched over in the hallway, he would comment. If there was, if you dropped something in the hallway, it was the cleanliness and the decorum and the respect for Talmud Torah. And he was insistent on ivrit ivrit and tefillah, with kavanah. And when you have role models who literally day in, day out, you walk and you say, look at this person who, in the face of adversity, comes and, is able to see the future and build the future. And he really did. Anyone who went to Yeshivat Lev, again, can say that Rabbi Freeman was a real role model and someone that, again, I think of actually very often. In high school, I had just too many teachers to mention as role models, from, again, Rabbi Tachtel, who introduced me to the world of Tanya and Chassidut, and Mrs. Aryeh for Navi, Rabbi Rubel, Rabbi, the famous Rabbi Eliezri for Chumash, who really exposed me to the methodologies of Nechama Leibowitz and Parshanut B'iyun. And my principals and assistant principal, Rabbi Safran, Mrs. Esther Krause. And it was really just as you said, it was almost, I would say, muvan me'elav, in a time that it wasn't really so understood, that of course women are going to strive for the highest levels of Torah learning. And I look back now, and now that you're asking, and realize that I was exposed to the real leaders of the time, not realizing that they're the exceptions to the rule. So in my mind, they were the rule.
And that, I'll add, from an outsider, that you were also relatively an exception, meaning I'm sure that there were women who.
I guess I didn't notice that.
No, it's okay. We're not supposed to notice that, but meaning you also were unbelievably fertile ground, and I'm sure you were every teacher's dream. It's an unbelievable. I don't know if I can remember the teachers who taught me in middle school.
I guess I have to say there was one teacher in particular in high school, Miss Scopin. She's now Mrs. Wolf, and I remember she had gone to Bar Ilan for a year. And she would teach. She taught Navi. I actually learned Sefer EO from her, and some of the Megillot as well. And she taught with such a passion, and in Hebrew. And she exposed me to milim manchot. Again, this is when it was really first becoming a phenomenon of textual analysis, even in Eretz Yisrael, and sensitivity to words and structure. Meaning, I knew chiasm, before coming to Eretz Yisrael, and to this day, I give her a tremendous amount of credit. I remember when I deliberated, once we decided that we were going to make Aliyah and I was going to finish my degree in Eretz Yisrael, it was clear, I'm going to learn Tanakh. Of course, I'm going to learn in Bar Ilan, because that's where Ms. Gopin had learned. And I want to be able to instill my students with both the love and the skills that she gave me. And Baruch Hashem, we really remained in touch every time I've gone back to Central, to Yeshiva University High School for Girls, to be able to see these teachers and now engage with them also as colleagues and mentors in many areas. So a very special zchut in Stern College. Also phenomenal role models. There was more, I would say, learning, the history. Rabbi Kannerfogel, Rabbi Kahn, I had the zchut of learning with Rabbi Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik. And it was coming to Eretz Yisrael and seeing for the first time how many of the names that I had heard, whether it was, Professor Nechama Leibowitz, and even though I didn't have the zchut to really learn with her, still to be able to go to shiurim and have living role models. I remember when I was 14 years old, my father took me to Young Israel of Woodmere to hear Rav Lichtenstein. And I had read some of his articles, and he was speaking about supererogatory law, Lifnim Mishurat Hadin. And I don't think I understood about 60% of the vocabulary words that he said, but here was a Rav that I had heard about, that I saw, my father respecting as well. And Baruch Hashem, my parents have tremendous, tremendous respect for rabbinic leaders. And I think that that's also what just instilled me from a very young age, with the sense of respecting teachers, respecting role models in Torah learning. And I remember walking out thinking, wow, here's someone who is able to bridge the worlds of philosophy and English literature, and he lives in Eretz Yisrael. And very often I think of even the reasons why I decided to come and live here and to move here and, not go back to Chutz La'aretz. And a lot of it was through seeing places like Yeshivat Har Etzion, communities, places of Torah learning, opportunities for Torah learning for women that really started here in Eretz Yisrael, and seeing that it's not just a hypothetical idea or, an ideal that's spoken about, but is lived, and how people integrate Torah in every aspect of their lives. So definitely Rabbi Lichtenstein, and
that I just want
I
to
think
interrupt
about
you for
him
a
very
second.
often.
That story that you just shared about hearing him in shul reminded me, in a somewhat painful way, of the experience of meeting the presence of someone, that it's not necessarily at all about what it is that they actually said. Most of the time we don't remember. That's actually a Nechama line that
Exactly.
students will remember, I think, 10% of what you actually teach them. But what remains with them is the experience of what it meant to learn with you. And that I felt that just now as you told that story of that coming into a room that sort of
Yes.
just like filled with the presence of a really unbelievable human being,
Of a great person.
and
Yes.
I'm remembering
Yes.
also how much that's lacking in our lives right now. That
Correct.
feeling
As I say
of
that,
seeing people and feeling their energy and feeling the aura that they bring with them is something that I pray that we will, as soon as possible, go back to being able to experience. But that moment of, or you reminded me of what it means to feel someone's presence and how it's been so long
yes,
since I felt that.
that's right. Even as I said it, I was thinking, I miss Rav Lichtenstein so much, and I think about him so much. What would he say? What would, what would he answer? How would he act in this situation? And as I was thinking about him, I was thinking also, just as you said, that aura and excitement of meeting Rabbi Sachs for the first time in London, speaking together with him, meeting Rabbi Twersky, meeting Rav Rabinovich, meeting Rav Henkin, being tested by Rav Henkin for the Yotzot Halacha program, meaning really Chaval al Da'avdin. We were missing so much, so much. And I think that also what this time period has taught us is definitely take advantage of the role models that we have. So Baruch Hashem, that I was very inspired also through Matan, to see women such as Rabbanit Malkabina having a dream, of starting teaching Torah around her dining room table and saying, let's just open this up to all the women of Yerushalayim. You know what? Let's open it up to the women of Renana, the women of Beit Shemesh, the women of Yerucham, the women of the Sharon, and the excitement of even having, seeing your chazon lamoed of coming true and realizing that im tirtzu ein zo agada. So that's certainly a role model in limud and asiyah and Rabbanit Henkin, and Baruch Hashem that we have such women in our midst. Dr. Brian Yocheved Levy, who instilled me with a sense of, I would say, even not just integrity in Torah learning, but crossing every T, dotting every I, and making sure to look not only at classical parshanim, but I always till this day, Baruch Hashem, can call her and say, I'm teaching this. What Mekorot, what sources would you look at? And being inspired to incorporate skills of one teacher and at the same time, develop on your own. I remember when she sat in on one of my classes, she said, okay, this is what I would have mentioned, here and here, which you did. And it was so nice to see that you took this idea in a different direction, and just that confidence and being able to, again, instill in students and tell them that the goal is really, mikola, mikomalam dai hiskalti, mi talmidai yoter mikulam, to be able to be inspired by students as well. And I think of all really colleagues and students that inspire me till today in many different ways.
I often think about the fact that a generation today is, I don't know, maybe a maximum 10 years. Sometimes I think generations are every 5 years, but you have in the past decades of teaching seen a number of waves. We'll change the word. It's not generation, but a number of waves of different learning phenomenon in the women's learning world. And I guess I'm curious how you see them. What are some of the waves that you think you have been witness to that you're seeing now? What changes have you seen in the past 30 years of teaching? Or is that it, right? Something like that.
Yes. 20, One second, 20, oh my, 28
28
years.
years.
Yes.
So what have you seen,
Baruch
Shani?
Hashem. So, just as you said, numerous changes. I think when, first teaching both seminary students and adults from a young age, the definitely going back 28 years or so, the novelty of it, which meant both those that were coming to Israel for the year and adult education programs, whether it was generally, classes, even adult education of 15, 20 women, and definitely with regard to the students that would come. And it was seen as an opportunity, as a tremendous opportunity to learn, which
Yeah.
meant that there was a certain respect, definitely a maximizing of time, a sense of we're here because we have this opportunity and now a form through which we can advance into our learning.
You know what word comes
So
to mind is tzima'on. That there was a
yafe,
thirst. There was a
yafe,
real
there was a thirst.
thirst. I definitely count myself
Exactly.
among those people of just
Which you're very
take up
lucky.
every drop that you can, because
Yes.
this is gold.
Right. I remember not having to encourage students to spend their time in the Beit
Yeah.
Midrash. It was, of course, they're going to be in the Beit
A
Midrash.
little bit of
And of
a
course,
little
they're
bit of a
going.
golden era, I would even say.
Exactly, 100%. And if you're saying a golden era, then it was a golden era with numerous goals in mind as well. Meaning people recognized what they were lacking, and there was a desire, as you said, a tzima'on, a real thirst. Okay, I want to finish Tanakh. I want to understand this. Okay, if I didn't, fully understand this in class, I'm going to run to the library now. I'm going to run to the Beit Midrash. I'm going to call the teacher afterwards and try to, to compensate and to learn even more. And I think also in terms of relationships, then, because it was a matter of really guiding, and at the same time, the goal was to just help provide them with the wings that they already have and see them fly. There was a sense of really of tremendous nachat. I can remember, the truth is that Baruch Hashem, I remember all my students, but I think those earlier years where and you had the sense that these are people who want to take everything they learn and just keep building. You know what we say even till today, this isn't, a 1 year opportunity. These are going to be the building blocks, and you're going to see how this affects every aspect of your lives.
When did you start to see that shift?
So exactly, I think about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No more, meaning after 10 years. So about 18 years, 15 years ago, I started to see a shift. I think it became more the norm for people to study in Israel. I think also, thank God, numerous adult education, I think, was still on the
Yeah.
rise. And more and
Well,
more
also
people coming.
for
And the
those
very
women, it
fact,
was still a novelty because they hadn't been part of the
and it
previous
was
generations who got to do their learning in
exactly.
Israel.
Exactly. And it also meant that they had to find the time. Women were only starting to take off little blocks of time from their careers, from raising their children. So they were still maximizing, but I think the entire world, especially of the seminary world, became, okay, almost taken for granted, which meant that people weren't necessarily maximizing their time. It became, a little, I would say even more heterogeneous in terms of the year. It wasn't just about Torah learning anymore. It was
Yeah.
about the chavaya, the experience of coming to Israel, touring in Israel.
Did you also see that shift in the Israeli institutions that you were teaching in, or was it
So
not
the
really
Israeli
parallel?
institutions was more it. So everything was a few years behind in the Israeli,
Mm-hmm.
meaning both the availability, meaning I think of Midrashet Lindenbaum, wherein when I first started teaching there 28, 27 years ago, there were many more Americans than Israelis who were coming to learn. And that shift really only started again about 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the initial, I would say, the Israeli programs for the first also 10 years or so were bringing in the elite, the ones who genuinely wanted to learn Torah. And you can look at the Israeli teachers today, and I can tell you exactly who's from that initial
Yeah.
generation. So can
Yes,
you.
I can.
Anna, they're Baruch Hashem, they're the leading teachers in high schools and midrashot today. And it's really been over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years that, and many people have written about this, that because it's It's so expected. And because everyone goes to Midrashah these days, that you don't have the same vigor, you don't have the same excitement.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you, where do you still feel that like that sweet spot of, oh, that's the
Yes,
stuff that I grew up on. So for you, you feel like
yes.
it's an adult education.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Again, I love the challenge of building the next generation. It really is. I thank Hakadosh Baruch Hu every single day for that zchut, and it's a real
Yeah.
challenge. And
And it's
at the
gotten
same
harder
time, I
over
think
time,
Hashem,
is what you're
oh,
saying.
so much,
Yeah.
so much. And this has been a change in adult education. That thank God because it is more accessible. And it's something that, as opposed to still taken for granted, I don't think adult education is still taken for granted because it means that you're sacrificing something, whether
Yeah.
it's time with your
Mhm.
children, whether it's time from your career. And I mean this for women of all
Yeah.
ages. And
It's intentional. No
I
matter what, it's intentional. Yeah.
exactly. Which means that if I'm there, I'm going to, and I love the women who say, okay, we want to learn, we want to get, learn the maximum. We want to start on time. We want to make sure that there aren't too many
Yeah.
distractions. That's that. And that's the nachat to know that you're teaching. What I have found though, this is what I think is a tremendous opportunity. And I, as a result, I think my teaching has changed a little in this regard that it used to be, as we said, going back 25 years of adult education, okay, we have so much that we have to compensate for. We have to learn more. We haven't learned these works. Now, thank God, there have been women then. I have women in my classes who I've been learning with for over 25 years, Baruch Hashem. And firstly, it's a wonderful opportunity for me because I try never to repeat a course, never to
To
repeat a
repeat.
sefer, but also to build off on that. And it's no longer about, okay, do I have the basics, the fundamentals or foundations of Jewish knowledge? Now I want to have the skills to be able to bring this to my family, to my community. So many of the conversations that I have with women, both in class, out of class, are how can we take this and affect the world around us? So it's remarkable to see how there still is idealism, in the 18, 19-year-olds, and I love that. But I'm seeing much more of an ideological trajectory in adult education. The greatest nachat, if I may say, is when I now and so many of the women that I teach in Matan were my students in seminary. And can you
Yeah.
imagine really having grown throughout these years in Torah learning?
Okay, so with all that in mind, and having really quite a picture of the trends that have taken place over the past years, recognizing the faults and realities of the times we live in, and having that fully in mind, what would you like to see going forward in women's learning?
So what I definitely, both in response to what we just spoke about and also in response to many of my students who have gone through both the seminary world and the worlds of Jewish, adult education, I think to get back to, as much as we love the availability and I'm going to say almost again the heterogeneous nature of teaching Torah, I think that we do have to work on creating more Torah leadership, right? And this time more than ever has really perhaps again resounded in our ears as to the lack of Torah leadership that we have. And I don't just mean Torah academic leadership and scholarship,
Leadership in Chutz La'aretz you speaking about in Israel, and
both.
what do you mean when you say leader? And what do you mean when you say leadership?
So I mean Torah leadership, and I don't mean within the realm of psak halacha, in that regard. Think about the leaders that we've lost, right? When we think of our leaders and we think about them more, and definitely, poskim and gedolim batorah, but when we say even gadol batorah, we talk about their midot and we talk about their erudition and their understanding and their ability. I think about Rabbi Sachs, who would be able to take advanced philosophical concepts and make them accessible to the layman without diluting them. And I think that we're missing that rigorous Torah study that's required to edify leaders. And what
So how do we
both,
how do we go about
through
doing that? If
how do we
essentially what we're saying is
exactly
that the people coming in now are not really so interested in that.
Exactly. So I think that there still has to be, whether it's in different seminaries, a more rigorous track, whether it's creating more of those opportunities, being a little more selective, while at the same time, again, taking advantage of all the technology and making high level Torah learning. Baruch Hashem, there are so many, daily doses of Torah, of Nevi'im, of Ktuvim, of Daf Yomi, of so much. I think that we have to raise the bar a little also. Thank God
You know
that
what I
they're
also think? You can't shortcut building moral, religious, and knowledgeable fiber. There is no shortcut. There will never be a shortcut to that in life.
There will never, and I'm glad that you said moral religious fiber, because I don't want it to be mistaken that I'm just speaking about, programs wherein you learn all of Tanakh with,
No, I understand
again, a
very much. So when
background
you
to the
say Jewish
Perushim.
leadership, you mean a person who both
Thank
represents
you.
Torah in their knowledge and in who they are as a human.
Exactly. So firstly, I started this in Or Torah, and then Baruch Hashem, together with Brian Levy and Dr. Dodi Tobin and Matan, to start this through Eshkolot. And the goal of such programs, whether it's Tanakh teachers training programs, whether you mentioned through Mizrahi, the Shalhevet Shlichim program, the Lapidot Women's Advanced Torah Learning, the Yoatzot Halacha, the goal is not just to learn, and as you said, without any shortcuts, meaning exams and projects and programs. Just as you said, how do you develop that personality, a moral personality, a sensitive personality, a clear personality, an inspiring personality? And that's where I see the only way that we're going to be successful with the next generation that's going to be all the more challenged with distractions and dilutions. The only way is if they have those role models, if they have those teachers. So that's where I find my heart and my soul are much more invested in that now.
Amazing. Okay, so I wanted to transition into our sort of final piece for today. I'm sure of the many, many texts and wisdom and midrashim and psukim that you come across, even on a daily basis. I want to ask you if there's something that stands out in your mind, even if just today, but something that stands out in your mind as sort of a guiding light for you, whether personally or professionally.
If you're asking for a guiding light, and especially during these times, then speaking also of role models and different mentors that I picture in my mind. So I feel, and many of those very close to me know that I feel very much inspired by Rabbi Akiva, both his personality, his depth of Torah study, his ability to see the kutzo shel yud, the tagin of the Torah, to be able to appreciate what's even beyond and in between the lines and the letters, and especially his vision. And I ask myself very often, okay, how would Rabbi Akiva see this right now? How would he see our Corona times? And I think back at the sugya at the end of Masechet Makot Daf Chaf Daled of Rabbi Akiva not being afraid amidst all of his peers. They're really his Rabbanim, that he's with, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer. And while everyone is crying, both upon hearing the celebration of the Romans and then ultimately the jackals, the shualim, the foxes, running out of the Kodesh Kodashim as they cry, and for good reason they're crying. Hazar HaKareb Yumat, Rabbi Akiva is able to burst forth with laughter. And as they ask him why, and he incredulously asks them, why are you crying? He's able to say, because he lives and he breathes and he sees and he learns the psukim of the past.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up with the final little round. Okay, now these are associative questions, so you don't have to, just whatever comes to your mind first. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a bunch
Okay,
of
I'm
questions.
getting nervous. I feel like I'm on a game show host, and okay, these are the last.
We're just gonna end off with a little personal note here. Okay, Shani, what book is currently on your nightstand, or books? It's probably books. What books?
Exactly, it is books. So I always, obviously, I have my siddur next to me, my Mizmori Tehillim that I say, and I keep a Penine Halacha by me, or some of Rav Rimon's Svarim. I think, and it's very important. I teach my students this as well. I call it the 15 minutes of halacha before you go to sleep. It keeps you halachically sensitive, halachically knowledgeable, and also helps put you to sleep. Again, but basically, again, too, yes, which is fine. You'll see, you'll just helps remember much more. I am in the middle. I'm almost finished with Jordan Peterson, and I'm enjoying that very much already. Thinking of taking notes. I'm also a very very big David Brooks fan, and reading Rabbi Sachs on morality right now is his latest book. Becoming a Soulful Educator by Aryeh Ben David is fantastic. Quick read, but I always find that even just reading a paragraph or two
Yeah.
inspires me and reminds me, yes, what am I doing? How am I thinking? Making sure that these messages are internalized and that they're as thorough and comprehensive as possible. And a wonderful book that I have to say, I have to take this one off because I just finished it, recommended by a colleague in Matan, Yael Leibowitz, Trespassing on Einstein's Lawn by Amanda something. I can't remember last name, but phenomenal story of and really more biographical. I love historical novels, but this is more biographical and relates to my scientific side. She's a physicist who speaks about her relationship with her father, really on a personal level, but also through study of science. So that's the
Wow.
Einstein's Law
Okay.
component. So I recommend that to everyone.
This is it's a very long bedtime routine. Okay. Who would you like to sit down with for coffee?
Wow. So this is an easy one because last summer, if I may just say, meaning the summer before, I was teaching at Camp Hask in upstate New York, and there was a panel also of educators, and I was asked this question, and without a blink, really without a blink, I said right away. It was right after, it was a few weeks after a very close friend and colleague had passed away, and now almost 2 years later, I can say the same, that I would sit down with a cup of coffee, meaning, yes, with Rabbi Akiva, with the Rambam, and I wouldn't be drinking the coffee. Not that I do like to drink coffee, but to really just sit down with Dr. Abigail Rock and tell her, express a tremendous hakaras hatov to her for so much that she has taught me, that she's taught Am Yisrael, to ask her for insights.
Amazing. Your favorite tefillah, prayer?
I'm just going to share this, that I would always interview students and ask them the same question, Yosefa, what's your favorite tefillah? And most of them would say, Modim anachnu lach, we thank Hashem. And I said, yes, but we thank Hashem in so many different aspects of life. I thank Hashem, all the time. Asher Yatzar, so many different brachot. But 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and little knocks on the head like that remind you to appreciate every single bracha in life. And during that time, I came across a beautiful story of the Chafetz Chaim, of whom it said that when he would say modim, he would stay in the modim position for about a half an hour. And I remember thinking, wait a second, we get up when we say Shem Hashem. So he was in a modim position, again, literally bent over, appreciating his submission and his thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he said modim anachnu lach she'ata hu for five words. And I realized, wow, because we have so much to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for. So I took upon myself, every time I say modim, literally 3 times a day, I don't get up. I haven't made it to a half an hour, but again, not consciously. I don't get up until I can really think about the greatest brachot in my life.
Something people think about you that isn't true.
Oh my. That I don't sleep. I do sleep.
Oh, you do? Okay. No, but it's a good one because I thought you didn't sleep either.
You see? Okay. So I won't tell you how many hours, but I do sleep.
Right.
Baruch Hashem. And everyone should sleep. And scientists are realizing more and more how sleep is connected to so many different phenomena, whether it's the lack thereof and sicknesses. So everyone should sleep.
Okay.
Yes.
So you find some hours in there sometime. You have any hidden talents, Shani? We're very aware of your non-hidden talents. I'm curious if you have any hidden ones.
Hidden ones. So I don't know if you know that I danced ballet for 12 years, and I love more classical dancing now that I get to express it in any way other than yoga. I love and enjoy, and think yoga is very strengthening and healthy, especially reminding us to breathe.
Yeah. Okay, Shani, for our last question for this conversation, something that you're grateful for right now in your life. Wow,
what am I not grateful for? And I mean that. I I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything. And I know that that's difficult to say right now, but there's so much goodness in people, so much goodness. Again, and with all the problems and with all, I have to be honest, this lack of achdut is tearing me apart personally. And then there are these little glimpses of, and there are brachot everywhere, through the trees. You were speaking about being mindful before. Let's be mindful of what's right in front of us. And when we see those brachot, then we can't help but literally burst out, nishmat kochai, to sing the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So thank you for asking that.
I want to tell you that I'm really grateful for this conversation and for this opportunity to have time to sit with you and hear from you and hear your thoughts about yourself and about all the teaching that you've done. And you have, I'm sure that you know this, but your work has touched so many people, and you are a guiding light for so many women and families all around the world. So I just want to say thank you in the name of all those who I'm sure are listening to every last word that you're sharing. Thank you for bringing all that to Am Yisrael. It's really, really appreciated.
Well, toda lach v'tvorachi, and bemet vrachat Hashem alayach ve'al kol Yisrael.
Amen.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I'm Dr. Yosefa Fogel-Rubel, and this is One-on-One Women Talk Torah, a series brought to you by Matan Women's Institute for Torah Study. Thank you to Tzofia Vindish for producing this episode and the entire Matan team for their input. Please do One-on-One and Women's Torah Learning a small favor by sharing this podcast with family and friends so that we can reach new listeners. You can stream and download these episodes on Spotify, iTunes, and Matan's website, and write us any feedback at podcast@matan.org.il. That's podcast@matan.org.il. Thanks for listening, everyone.